Our approach at Northwind is to design to the region, developing architectural forms and spaces that, rather than displacing nature, weave into it in a way that protects and celebrates it. The key to this is to first build as lightly on the land as possible, taking care to protect the indigenous flora and fauna. Second is to develop spaces that, while sheltering, are irregular, organic, and permeable, intertwining with and bringing the outdoors in. Third is selection of natural building materials, local spruce, yellow cedar, local stone, and weathering metals. Our goal is that once a project is built, it should seem a natural part of the landscape, inevitable, as if it's always been there. My name is Armando Diesis. I'm from the Wolf Moiety. I am Aak'w or Killer Whale from Angoon, and I work at Northwind Architects as an intern. UAS developed an Aak'w Shoreline master plan to connect the campus to Aak'w Lake. The plan includes a floating trail and a small trail system with direct and ADA access to the shelter. It also includes an 800 square foot lake viewing shelter that could house 15 to 20 students for classes and other activities. We started the design process with two key design elements. The first being that it had an integrated relationship to the land and the lake using natural form and materials, and that the structure actually provided a sense of shelter. To go along with these two key design elements, our preliminary sketches played around with the form of the roof and how it can fit into the landscape better, and whether each form accentuated the connection between Aak'w Lake and the land and the person and the area.
The project process was moving along normally when, at an early meeting with UAS, it got completely stopped in its tracks. At this meeting, someone stood up and asked us if we had talked with the Aak'w, and we realized that we didn't consult with the people who were here first, the people whose whole identity revolves around the connection to the lake. This realization sparked a whole year of meetings with elders, where we went out with the intention to hear traditional stories to gain inspiration from. One of these stories was the story of Aak'w, or Lady of the Lake. This story has some imagery in it that describes Aak'w's hair rising out of the water and connecting with the trees and the land. This imagery became the third key element in our design process. We also met with the UAS student group known as Wuchin. They expressed some themes that they thought would be really important for this project. Our early discussions revolved around the idea of the structure being a Tlingit clan house and adorning it with different types of crests and designs. But one of the students stood up and asked us how we were going to represent all the other students at UAS. And we realized that we couldn't be so literal in our representation of Tlingit culture, and that we had to be more abstract, that way we could be more inclusive. And that's how we began our study in two-dimensional formline.
We began a study on traditional Northwest Coast art known as formline, trying to find elements to utilize in our design. We found that ovoids are fundamental for the art style. Everything is built off these shapes. Every ovoid follows a certain set of proportions, with a negative space at the top and a thicker negative space at the bottom clearly defining the base. This is an early sketch showing that I was experimenting with using an ovoid as the basis for the floor plan. The proportions of the ovoid create a great gathering space. If you were to take an ovoid and extrude the positive and negative spaces, creating tiered levels, it creates an amphitheater-like space. We then began to study formline in 3 dimensions. We were fascinated with the complex shapes and compound curves that formline carvings had. Carvers have an in-depth understanding of how 2-dimensional formline can be used to create 3-dimensional carvings. For example, totem poles are started with a 3D idea in their head. They draw the profiles of the pole on the side of the log. They then carve away the wood until the complex and compound curves were left. This became a unique opportunity to take a different avenue of design by using uncommon aspects of the culture to dictate the architecture. Here we have some early sketches showing that we were experimenting with formline to determine the floor plan in sight. We were also experimenting with the shape, trying to tie the 3 key elements with the natural form rising out of the ground. This is our final sketch using the elements of carving and our 3 key design points. When it came time to create the 3D model for the shelter, I used a similar method to carving. I drew an ovoid and extruded the ovoid and removed the unwanted material to create the compound curves for the shelter. We then added the gathering space inside. To do this, I used some designs known as filler shapes in formline. To maintain the gathering space, I used a shape known as a trout head. The trout head was perfect because we wanted to create a public and private place within the shelter. I was able to use the trout head's mouth to divide the room. Then to add the bathroom and the mechanical room, I used what's known as a cheek. It was perfect because the cheek extends from the bottom of the ovoid and can be split up into 2 sections. I think this project is really important because it's the first of its kind. Rather than having a Western building with Tlingit elements put on it, the Tlingit culture determined the Western design. And we were able to keep it abstract enough that we remained inclusive of everyone here at UAS. This whole design process was an evolution for architecture in Southeast Alaska. It's a trend that I hope I see move forward, and I'm really proud to be a part of it. Our collaborative effort with the Tlingit elders and UAS students created a design which is respectful of and celebrates the land and the people of it, the Aak'w. This respect for the people is expressed by the use of formline to design the shelter. And we respect the land by doing things like proposing crushed rock rather than asphalt for the trail system, and by proposing floating the shelter rather than building it on the wetlands. Both minimize the impact to the land. If we can build this someday, it'll be a big step towards strengthening the culture.